Fantastic news for the Journal of Service Research. Our paper titled Corporate Digital Responsibility in Service Firms and Their Ecosystems has achieved tremendous success. Not only did it win the JSR Best Paper Award for 2023, but it was also recognized as one of the best papers in the entire service field by ServSig and selected as a finalist for the Award for Responsible Research in Marketing by AMA, EBSCO, and RRBM. We are thrilled about these achievements and would love to hear from the authors about what winning these prestigious awards means to them.
To have this work recognised by these awards and importantly to be acknowledged by our fellow peers, it's so wonderful to be a recipient of these awards.
I am so absolutely thrilled that our paper on CDR has won the Journal of Service Research Best Paper Award. It's the first time I won this award, and it is from the premier journal in my field, and I'm completely thrilled about it.
It's great that people see that AI leads us to a path where we really need to think about dealing with digital technology in a responsible way.
But I think the best part of all is that it doesn't only get a lot of interest from corporate individuals or those who work in the public service, it gets people on the street interested in service research as well.
What is CDR and why is it so important?
CDR defines the principles that underpin a firm's ethical, fair and protective use of both data and technology. And that is becoming more and more critical because data, algorithms, robotics, generative AI is touching every aspect of our lives, from healthcare to education to finance to communications. It is just everywhere. CDR really deals with three topics here. The first one is ethics. And there's the big macro picture, of course. It's about dehumanization, addiction, social engineering, and these topics. And you can break it down to a micro level where it's all about that this technology can analyze us, predict us, nudge us, shape our decisions without our knowledge, and this is done by for-profit organizations. So ethics is a big issue. The second is fairness, and we know about all of these cases that were brought into the public. One famous one was where everything being equal, but it's a lady rather than a man, and a credit application gets a lower credit line. And we know that there are no bias-free algorithms. So that's the second really big issue. The third one is all about privacy, and there's more and more data collected about us, and we have an incredible digital footprint, and virtually all of these services we are using, they coerce you in clicking, I agree to the privacy policy, because otherwise you can't use the service. So privacy is really the third big pillar of CDR.
Why do companies not follow CDR?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Why do companies not following CDR? And it's not so much because they don't want to, but it has more to do with this new tech environment that makes it very hard for company to follow properly through CDR principles. So there are multiple aspects that are nowadays different than they used to be in the past. The one thing is we have significantly more data. So we not only have the address of the customer and maybe his purchase history, there's nowadays a real behavioral data on a regular basis, on live stream data, clickstream data, and all of this data is collected on a regular basis. And it's not so much about collecting data, then it's more about protecting that this data is used in the way it was intended to collect for. And it's very hard for companies to prevent that it will be not used for other purposes. The second thing is the algorithms that we are using. The algorithms that we are using sparked this big Gen AI boom. And they are so complex that even the programmers who are working on these algorithms cannot reliably say how the data is used and what are the results of this work is. And that makes it for company very, very hard to predict if they're behaving in the right way or not. And last but not least, companies are confronted with a delicate trade-off. We call that the CDR trade-off. So on the one hand side, it is good to follow CDR principles. It's good for your brand, and you maybe sleep better because you know you will be not flagged as a bad company. On the other hand, if you don't need to invest in CDR, you might save a lot of costs. You might have higher revenue. You might offer a better customer experience. And there are a lot of advantages of ignoring CDR. And especially if you think about, if the competition is doing this, what happens with me if I'm not doing this? So it's not an easy decision for the company, and they have to consider a lot of points.
How does CDR come into play within the digital service system?
Now, CDR issues are difficult for service firms to rectify because they can take on different forms throughout an entire digital service ecosystem. That is, take for example at the customer interface, CDR concerns are unique in that they directly impact the consumer and the touch points that engage them. Take for example, a consumer may be coerced or forced to give over their privacy or surrender their data in order to get value from a particular service. So that's very much customer orientated. But on the back end of the digital service ecosystem is CDR concerns that can be instigated by external business partners. So these are partners of the service firm that provide, the digital infrastructure and hardware. They might provide external data as well, and also other aspects of a service value chain, such as a meal for your Uber Eats order, for instance. And even though the service firm is not responsible for the actions of these external business partners, they are nonetheless liable as their CDR behaviors impact the rest of the digital service ecosystem. Take, for instance, they provide poison data that goes and leads to model drift or decay, and it leads to a diminished value for the consumer. Or they might even obtain data that's not been ethically sourced. So the service firm has to be very, very vigilant in not just maintaining stringent CDR values and practices within their own firm, but also holding their external business partners accountable to those same norms, values, and practices as well.
What can firms do to build a strong CDR culture?
Yeah. Look, I think it's clear to say that with the increased adoption of AI and other technologies into service firms, that our research drives at the fact that now is the time where businesses need to be engaging in CDR. And while the CDR trade-offs that Werner was just speaking about highlight the tensions that service firms encounter when they're looking at vetting CDR, our research has actually uncovered some tangible strategies that can be adopted by service firms in ensuring that they're building and then also sustaining a really strong culture of CDR within their organizations. We've put this under 3 key recommendations, the first of which is to recommend that firms adopt new CDR guidelines, policies, language, and tools that can be used across all of the units of the service firm in its totality. These cover off on issues such as data protection, privacy, cybersecurity, as well as the ethical management of digital technologies, which is critically important, particularly when you're looking at the new adoptions of things around deepfakes and as around facial recognition that we're seeing coming out into the market a lot more. Secondly, we recommend that service firms strengthen their data management and governance practices. So in terms of new governance practices, looking at ways in which they might be building an AI ethics board, looking at AI bias auditing, looking at reporting disclosures in and around automated decision-making associated with AI, and having this reporting be done on an annual basis and be transparent back to stakeholders to embed this practice further. And thirdly, we're recommending that firms invest. They invest in their managerial structures, they invest in their employees. So at a manager level, we're looking at ensuring that we're investing in roles such as CDOs or CIOs to have a look at that enterprise view of what's happening with technology and data across the firm. but that all employees should be engaged in some form of training around CDR practices or around digital competencies to ensure that everyone's compliance with CDR, and that this compliance can actually be built into performance metrics associated with employees, so that CDR becomes a business as usual approach within the firm. Ultimately, the effectiveness of building a strong CDR culture comes down to a firm-wide approach for organisations, from board members all the way through to frontline staff. And I think our research is really demonstrating the important role that all these stakeholders play in ensuring that they're building a very strong CDR culture.